that we will have access to ESET 2024.1. So if we have to even go POC, we need to make sure you guys are supporting it. I'm sure it's something behind the scenes. It just needs to be validated, I guess. But
sure, I'll look into that. I'll bring that back to the team and say, what's the timeline on potential supporting the 2024 and steps to do that.
Sounds good. Please proceed.
Yeah.
Yep. So what I have into the OpenStack environment at the level or with the Cinder functionality. So we have the interface between the Bacula software and the OpenStack environment with the Cinder driver stack, where it's obviously all about volumes and snapshots. So what we have is a very specific Cinder storage backend that essentially passes what you store in it to the Bacula software, so that backups that you trigger by creating a snapshot of a VM, of VM's drives, virtual disks, gets stored as a backup data stream, eventually by the Bacula file daemon, ends up on the Bacula storage, which obviously we have seen recently when I demonstrated how you handle storage with our web front end. So this is the current state of affairs. That this will change. I will give a bit of insight what we are going to do to extend and enhance that. But this is what we have right now, and to make this pretty clear, obviously we will not stop supporting the different OpenStack versions with what is out now. We will continue that. We will follow there. That is not a question. The thing that is actually more challenging for our development team is to make sure that we are using the right reference architecture of OpenStack as a whole, because there are quite a few different ways to run OpenStack. You're aware of that, different distributions eventually, and all of those behave slightly differently. So this is where a good part of our work is for the time being. Anyway, coming back to this part here, this is what we do have. The control of the backup and restore processes, as we do it right now, is contrary to what you have seen when I demonstrated BWeb for you, is all through the OpenStack command line interface. This is mostly because initial customers and users expected to run their backups through the OpenStack interfaces with the OpenStack software. So our current implementation is actually relying on backups to be triggered by essentially logging in on a host running the Cinder API and executing the respective commands on there, which is kind of similar to what we see how people run, well, not only OpenStack environments or OpenStack projects, but what we're also seeing in a way of mindset with quite a few users of Kubernetes, which is also exactly the way, for example, Oracle essentially provides the only way to run backups and restores of their databases. You do it through the product API, and that API in this case is a command line interface. So this is what we're having. The actual implementation, of course, can make use of Bacula infrastructure to execute jobs. Let me see. We should have.
So, Arno, a real quick question there.
Of course.
So if you go back to that architectural picture, so today, the OpenStack is an environment maintained by a different team, and we are the backup or data recovery team, right? So can you help us understand which of these components, like I understand Bacula, you're gonna install it as a standalone on a server, right? And it will have a plugin. Can you clarify what goes on the OpenStack environment, what stays on our environment, or is it all one? Can you clarify that piece for us, please?
on the OpenStack host, you need to have the Bacula file daemon. This one here with the OpenStack VM installed and running on a host providing the Cinder API.
Okay.
All the other Bacula infrastructure can and I would say should be separated from the production environment as much as possible, as usual with our architecture.
Okay, so the one picture on the left side, or there are multiple Bacula boxes, right? So the Cinder block is whatever the Bacula is listed on the Cinder block, that's all in OpenStack, whereas the other two images are external. This image is a little confusing for us.
Well, this image tries to give an insight of where the actual interaction between Bacula and the OpenStack's software interface. So if you look at this outer box, this is the OpenStack environment, and of course, usually it will be a rather large cluster of systems, each running different services. I mean, that's kind of obvious, I think. We interact only with the Cinder part of OpenStack. Because we have our particular driver interface between the Cinder backup functionality and the Bacula functionality. Those two parts, the OpenStack VM plugin for the Bacula file daemon, which is this one here, and the Cinder backup driver functionality. They interact through the typical thing, Unix sockets and other inter-process communication methods. So they need to run on the same host.
So Aaron, the drivers and the POSIX.py and Bacula.py, is it something we need to install on those compute nodes within the OpenStack environment or on the KVMs?
Yes, this is what you install as part of the installation of the Bacula plugin to interact with OpenStack.
Okay, and is it provided by Bacula or will it
It is provided as part of the package of the software we provide.
Okay, so it goes along with the Bacula plugin, which you're talking on the left hand
Exactly.
side. Okay.
Exactly.
Will it will be one package, or do we have to install them in two different places?
No, it is installed on the same host. So one place only where you do this installation.
Okay.
And currently, let me check. Actually, I think we have this as a unified package.
Just while Arno's looking for that, guys, just a couple quick questions. So, our last meeting with Arno, OpenStack was more of a to be determined. Now it sounds like you guys are moving ahead. Where are you guys with your timeline?
We're still evaluating solutions. It's not concrete, but we
Right.
finally got hands-on with one environment that fits our POC approach, right?
Okay.
We're still evaluating Hyper-V. We're still evaluating Nutanix and things like that.
Right.
Like I said, there are multiple teams working on multiple pieces of this
Right.
puzzle.
Yeah.
So when we had a conversation with OpenStack team, they said, "Hey, here you go, guys. We have a POC environment." I'm like, "Sure, we have a vendor ready." So that's why we're focusing today more on OpenStack. And as your POC is tight with timeline on 30 days or whatever that thing is, so we are trying to understand it better. I may request you guys, actually, we had to have another meeting with our OpenStack team as well to see what they have to do to get this working. We may have a working session with them when we go POC and things like that. But there are a few questions they were asking, saying, "Hey, what exactly needs to go on the compute nodes? What do we need to do to get this tool working for you guys," right? Mm-hmm. So that's where I'm trying to ask, okay, so our Manoj is asking the same question. The OpenStack VM plugin, the file driver daemon, these have to go on each compute node, correct?
No, they go on the nodes with the Cinder infrastructure.
They go on the nodes with the Cinder infrastructure, okay?
And it would be when we want to start into a POC in your environment, it would be quite useful to see what actual OpenStack distribution you are using and which operating system you're running them on. In some cases, we have choice there. So essentially, what is the platform that we actually need to provide the packages for?
I think that's the one we mentioned to Chris, right? 2024.1 of Caracal.
Yeah, the Caracal.
That is a version of OpenStack, but is it vanilla OpenStack installed and built from the official Git repos, or is it OpenStack as shipped as some sort of extra distribution? And if it's vanilla, on which operating system, on which Linux distribution do you deploy that? Those are the questions we need to have answered.
Yeah, I think it's Rocky 9 is what they're deploying with.
Mm-hmm.
But whatever questions you have for our OpenStack, please do send that our way.
Absolutely.
We'll get that answer for you.
Yeah, we've got a internal chat, so I'll position that and say, what questions do you guys have for Garmin?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Aaron, one more question. What is the main use of Bacula file distribution?
You mean the Bacula FD, the Bacula file daemon?
Yes.
This is our agent, which does all the work of collecting data to backup and passing it out when restoring.
That's for restore only, or will it use for backups as well?
It is needed to pass all data through it at backup and at restore time.
Okay. So will it be able to read even the directory structure, or it's just only for the block based?
The Bacula file daemon is the thing that really does all the work for backups and restores when it's about talking with the original data source and restoring those. Which means by default, without any plugin, it understands about file systems.
Okay, within the Bacula.
With the plugins, in your case, with the OpenStack VM plugin, it gains the functionality to talk, in this case, to the Cinder backend about virtual machine disk images.
Okay.
It will. You would be able to use it, for example, to back up files and to restore eventually files from the host it's installed on. From the Cinder hosts, although the usefulness of that, of course, depends on your existing deployment schemes and what you plan for disaster recovery. In most cases, you will probably redeploy those systems from prepared images or using playbooks, recipes of any sort, so that you are probably not doing any backups and restores of those. But if you want to do that, you would be able to use that same file daemon to backup and restore plain files from that host.
Okay. So the Bacula will be like a service along with Nova and Cinder, right? It's a plugin service, if I'm understanding right. And the drivers will be installed within the Cinder service.
That's the interface between, or rather to the Cinder environment. Those drivers are part of the Cinder service, and the file daemon with its plugin use them to interact with the Cinder environment.
Okay. And what the main purpose of these drivers? I mean, just to be compatible with the Cinder database, or anything else? Just to read the Cinder database?
No, to do all the interaction between the Bacula software itself, the core Bacula program,
Okay.
And the Cinder infrastructure.
Okay.
Of course, it's if you will, it's only reading or interacting with the database and with the volume service, and it does know about snapshots. That's all it does. But that is actually the work it has to do.
Okay. So what kind of tasks it can do? I mean, will it support the VM snapshots or individual VM DKs? Backups. How does it work? Can we go a little detail on that?
Yes, we can do that. What it can do is, very straightforward. It can create snapshots of VMs, or it can create snapshots of the volumes attached to VMs. Can then read that data, typically remove those snapshots if no longer needed. And later on, it can create volumes and pass backed up data to those recreated volumes at a restore time, of course.
So can it capture the entire VM state, like if I take a VMware an example, right? As of now, with the backups we are doing, if I take a VMware snapshot that captures the entire network, disk config, and the UUIDs and whatnot, right? It captures the entire disk, the config file itself, and also the backend volumes or VMDKs. And if I have to restore, I just need to do a click of a button, and it will just restore the entire VM. Is that the same scenario, or is it if you, because the reason why I'm asking is you're specifically saying volumes, but not the entire VM state. That is the reason.
Indeed. Currently, as I said, we are backing up virtual disk volumes and can restore them. We do not capture the complete configuration of the VM and all the integration, and accordingly, we cannot restore it. This is something that is on the roadmap of our development team, but at this time, the process that we do provide is really backing up virtual disk images and restoring those.
How do you capture the? How are you guys recommending to capture the VM state for customers? I mean, like when I say VM state, the VM config that includes all the network, the storage, and all.
As I said, we do not do this at this time with the OpenStack VM plugin that we have now.
Okay, so yeah.
So he's going to jump to a roadmap in a bit, Manoj. That may
Okay.
answer some of your questions.
Okay.
But yeah, he's currently it's somewhat limited, right? We're working with them to increase it. Again, you'll see from the roadmap, it'll probably answer a few of your questions. And also, just to jump back, you mentioned something about POC. One of the things you have to understand is we're setting up a live subscription for you. So this isn't going to be a, here you go, you're on your own. We'll do, depending on what you need, a few hours of onboarding, right? Like you're not alone in this process, even though you're technically not paying for a subscription yet. We're there. You can write tickets. You can email me. It'll seem like you have the full support of a paid subscription with the POC. Just to give you a sense.
Yeah. So
I went over that with Akshat. I'm like, oh, maybe these guys hadn't heard, but yeah, that's it's a live subscription. So whatever functionality we have to offer you will be put in that POC. There won't be like, oh, don't worry, that works under the subscription. It's like, if it's not working, it's not working. And again, there'll be no limitations.
Chris, whatever the limitations or whatever so for example, just like we discussed right now, right?
Yep.
You can capture volume snapshot, not the VM state, meaning if I have to restore it, I can't reconfigure the network back so basically the IP address that was configured, can I get it back or can I not get it back?
I'll defer to Arno on that.
No, it is definitely not what we back up. We cannot restore that because we are not backing it up with the plugin we are currently talking about.
Just one thing, it may be possible for instance, there will be most likely in these snapshots, there will be a configuration file with this information. If it's in a static IP address, for instance, then it's possible to get that very same IP address. But for instance, if you're using DHCP, that the MAC will change, we will have no control about the MAC address, which would be an option for a regular VM restore. There will be no way to do that. But the information is most likely at the snapshot, but it's not integrated with the environment yet.
Yeah, I may be wrong. I think we may be using static IPs. Again, because of the way the applications that rely, I don't think they can go DHCP. I'll capture that information. Maybe this is a question we need to ask our OpenStack team as well. But what you're saying, Gustavo, is if it is a static IP, if we restore the VM has a higher chance of coming up with the same IP address. Is that what I got?
Yeah, exactly. If it is stored in the snapshot data, it's in the virtual disk, then it will be there, very likely.
Okay.
But we cannot guarantee.
Okay. Yeah, so something as a POC objective, we need to test this as a test case.
That's the best way to run through it. We again, due to the size of your operation, we didn't rush into a POC. It's the best way to see all the functionality and what's missing, right? And again, sometimes there's stop gaps that we can support. And again, we're going to get to the roadmap in a bit, which will probably get you more excited. Again, there won't be a hard timeline on the roadmap, but this is one of we just came back from the meeting. This is one of our top priorities to be working on. You're not the only customer asking about it. And again, we're happy to have conversations with your OpenStack team, right? This is open source software, so any shared information is always great for both of us, right? So, yeah.
So indeed,
one more question is
to get back. Sorry.
Yeah, Arno, one question. So when we use if we use a static IP, right, and it captures, right, and that's what I understand. So will it able to restore the entire network config as well along with the IP, like that includes the VLANs and all, or just the IP?
It will really what we restore is really just the image of the virtual disk.
Okay.
All the instance configuration, all the VM configuration around that is not part of what you get restored with that layer of access. The restore process that you eventually will be going through here is that abstracted. You recreate the virtual machine somehow. You restore the image and then you attach the image to the virtual machine.
Okay.
The tricky thing, of course, in a way, is how do I get my virtual machine back? And this is where the current state of the functionality of this plugin comes from, because typically those instances they are not manually created and managed. If they are deployed, for example, using Ansible playbooks, the typical approach would be that you just run that playbook to create the instance. And as part of the integration, and this is why we have this particular operational process. As part of the deployment of your restored VM, for example, you could run the necessary command on the OpenStack host that restores the virtual disk image. That is the underlying concept, that we just provide a very basic functionality here that you integrate into your existing ways and procedures to manage your OpenStack infrastructure.
I think on our side, we also need to understand how our OpenStack environment is being built. So there are some unknowns as well. Maybe in our next call, when we bring those guys in, some of these questions, we can get a clarification.
And get the questions ahead of time instead of just utilizing Arno on the fly. Like, we'll get the whole team to take a look at it, right?
Yeah, and like we talked, if you send your questions that is needed from OpenStack side, if you could send them ahead, we'll have them.
That's a fantastic idea. I love it.
Actually, I would even suppose that your colleagues who are building your OpenStack environment and who are designing the operational processes there, they will probably be quite happy if you just wait a bit. We can just put that into the chat here. If you just point them over to this part of our documentation.
Yeah, they reviewed this. I already sent it to them. Mm-hmm. So they have a copy of this.
Because essentially the interaction with the Bacula software with what we have here is essentially all in the hands of the OpenStack processes, and in a very straightforward and streamlined way, that you have scripts you need or programs you run and call from your existing deployment schemes, which would then be interacting with the Bacula software to get the results you want.
So
that's
one quick question.
Idea here.
So one Bacula director can talk to many OpenStack environments?
Of course.
So if we have, again, I don't think this is a possibility, but I'm just curious, if there is a OpenStack environment with a set of IPs defined with it, and if there is another OpenStack environment, which again probably have a similar set of IP schemas, right, or IP addresses. So 10.1.xxx, right? For some other reason, for them to fail over, if something happens, they create another region with similar IP config. Will Bacula worry about it, care about it, or it's like, no, as long as I connect to OpenStack environment, we're good? How does that work?
Well, the idea, the goal is definitely the latter. As long as we can have our file daemon on one of your Cinder hosts in the OpenStack environment, you will be able to restore, and you will be able to restore virtual machine disks, disk images, also from different hosts. It will be something that needs, obviously, as you need to pass information between the OpenStack clusters in a way, you have to have that sorted out. But if that is provided, you can do that sort of cross-cluster restores as well.
Got it.
So one question there. How does
the key? Sorry.
One question on the same topic, right? How does Bacula keep track of the volumes it do backup for the VM? So it just keep track by a UUID or just by name? How does it keep track?
On the Bacula side, we have a very straightforward scheme to do that. We have, essentially we just see files. A file would represent a particular disk image. And the combination of where that file was backed up from and its path and name is a unique identity. You can always find those things in the Bacula. The term is not quite right, but let's say in the repository of all the Bacula backups, it is possible to find whatever you backed up at all times. That's part of our core functionality, I would say. Deciding here on the OpenStack side what you actually want to retrieve is what I was getting at here. We have this particular program for that purpose, which is the OpenStack VM execute restore program. Let me bring up that documentation here. You will see how that works on the OpenStack side. Because the thing you need to understand is that you essentially map those OpenStack things to Bacula jobs representing eventually backups which contain certain files with information from the OpenStack point of view. So it is essentially the instance ID you need to know, and if you're interested in one particular volume, you might have more than one volume per VM, of course. So in that case, you also need the backup ID of that volume. If you know that, you can just pass it to the respective program, which will then essentially do the right thing.
So backup ID, will it be one ID for the entire all of the volumes within the VM or just by volume?
No, this is an identifier of a specific volume.
Specific volume, okay. So if we have to register multiple volumes, we have to run multiple times. Is that sound correct?
If you want to restore more than one volume, you can do individual restores of each individual volume. If you just skip this backup ID option, then you can just you can restore all the volumes that were backed up with one virtual machine.
Okay. So it automatically
that would kind of be our default to apply.
Okay.
But of course, in some cases, you may want only specific volumes, and in that case, you have this backup ID as a choice.
Okay. And where do you provide the specific date?
The interesting part, if you are going to restore data from one OpenStack environment to the other one, is that you essentially need to make sure that you have ensured that you have no overlapping names, which is kind of straightforward, because in the end you will usually use some sort of structured naming scheme or prefixes or something like that. And you need to make sure that you can just pass that information around as needed. Well, that is usually something that is kind of sorted out at the level where you decide what your recovery scenario looks like. It's not something that you solve just applying technology. It's something that results is applying a certain plan. In either case, this is probably going to be a moot point at a certain stage with our ongoing development, because for us the goal is to provide a more abstracted approach to OpenStack backup and restores, which is what we are planning, which is, well, I dare say something our developers are working on, but it will take time. Which includes, for example, a functionality that you will no longer need to do the restores only from the OpenStack side of things. You will be able to have our to have access to our, well, slightly more user-friendly and abstracted interface to virtual machine backups. I think Gustavo is going to show us some of that in the near future, very near future. And secondly, you should not need to do all this configuration of, or all the execution of which things to back up and which to restore individually, one by one, but rather you will be able to have the functionality to essentially create backups for all the virtual machines that you are running, and be able to address them by name as you see them from the outside eventually. That will also include, and this is where it's going to be interesting, I think, or more interesting even, this will also include the configuration of the virtual machine instances, like, for example, the software-defined network, which networks the machine is connected to. It will probably include, but this is something where I'm personally not quite sure, include more about the runtime state of VMs, including, for example, shared and configured secrets for the interaction between the different OpenStack environments. That will become possible. Let me try to jump back to the architecture overview, because we are essentially shifting the interface we are using as the source and for our backups and the target for our backups away from the pure Cinder thing, and are instead going to do the interaction with the hypervisor layer through the Nova and eventually the Glance APIs and functionality of OpenStack, which will give us access to, well, more environmental information, more state information, but requires also actually for us to provide the backend functionality, because the functionality to backup and restore at that level is simply not existing in OpenStack at this time. In other words, we have pretty clear goals of what we want to do and what we want to provide, which will probably make quite a few of your previous questions less interesting, but which forces us essentially to have our developers working with the OpenStack project pretty intensively, because first we need to identify which functionality we need, and then we need to make sure that that functionality can be sustainably provided as part of OpenStack, which in turn loops us back to the question of which versions of OpenStack do we support. And of course, our goal is to support whatever is supported and current OpenStack at whatever time it is. So we will quite naturally have to follow the development of the OpenStack project itself.
And Raj, if you can just confirm, or do you guys already got it? The version you're using?
The 2024.1, or which version?
Well, you mentioned Rocky something. I just didn't catch
that.
Rocky
9.
Rocky is the Linux distribution underlying that.
Just picking it up for the notes so I can send it over to the team.
So that was about the OpenStack thing. Our current solution, as we have it, with its functionality and with a way to integrate it, where I think in practice the integration is going to be the key point for larger environments, and and an outlook to what will change. But I would suspect these changes, these newer developments, will probably not be happening in the course of the first POC. They will take time.
Yeah, we're looking at months. I think you're going to go over the roadmap a bit, Arno, but yeah, we're looking. So I don't want to give you a real number, guys, just in case, but somewhere between 4 and 6 months. I don't want to, I've heard as early as 2, but for the final word, let's conservatively say 4 to 6 months.
So, can you guys provide the roadmap? I mean, what are the features you're coming up in the next versions, in the upcoming roadmap version? That would be helpful too.
Yeah, I think that's next, Arno. You're just going to kind of go over the roadmap that our CTO sent you.
Okay, perfect.
Well, that was kind of the roadmap that I just demonstrated. The feature set.
I'll send over a bullet point for the team. I've got a bullet point. I'll check with these guys to make sure it's viewable for the public. But I'll send that over as well, just in like a little doc file, all the bullet points. So you've kind of got it.
Yep. The key things there is that we will use integration not only with the Cinder functionality, but with preferably Nova, possibly Glance, and that we will also cover more of the OpenStack infrastructure itself.
Got it. Just one question. So what is it that we don't have in the BWAP that we have to do via command line in OpenStack? Is there any particular thing that today that you guys have and say, hey, you know what, this is not available in BWeb, you've got to do command line? Is there anything like that?
The OpenStack backup and restore functionality is not possible through BWeb at this time.
Oh.
The way you do that is actually that after you install the thing, you have those 4 programs to be used on the OpenStack hosts.
So these need to be run on the individual OpenStack hosts, you mean? I mean, individual clusters?
Yes, on those cluster members where you have the Bacula software installed, typically on a host where you run the Cinder component.
Okay, but where is the scheduler reside on? Is it in Bacula or in the Bacula within the OpenStack?
Well, for this layer of direct interaction, there is no scheduler. You can use the Bacula scheduler by applying what we call an administrative job, an admin job, which would be scheduled by Bacula, but that admin job would then essentially just run a program that uses typically SSH to log in on those hosts and submit the necessary commands. So it's an indirect integration in that case.
So I'm a little confused. I'm definitely
too.
For us, because when you showed us the demo, you were able to connect an OpenStack environment. You did everything from the UI, right? Last time.
Did we?
I don't think we went over
anything with OpenStack at that time.
No, I don't think we did.
I think
was it just the standard? So what were you connecting as a source for a VM?
The demo I did for you.
Yeah.
That was adding storage, the backup target to Bacula, and using that for any backup. The backup source was in that case probably just a plain set of files with a file daemon on one of the hosts in the demo environment. This had nothing to do with OpenStack.
Huh. Okay. Okay. So this is definitely a showstopper for us, honestly. If it is all script based, and I don't think we'll have access into the OpenStack environment to trigger backups with no scheduler.
Well, then the question is how can you, just purely theoretically, how can you interact with the OpenStack environment if you do not have access to it?
Well, I say so. So we are evaluating other products that integrate nicely with OpenStack too, right? There is a plugin that goes into the UI that has selection options. We were under the impression that once we make connections and we go and schedule from web, it runs the jobs. So what you're saying is that we have to have access to the OpenStack's nodes to run these commands, right?
Yes.
I'm little.
Yeah, even my assumption is once we integrate the OpenStack using API into the director, into the backlog director, just like it is running a VM discovery, right? You just go and run daily VM discovery jobs, and it just include into the scheduler or the policy, and it just run the backups. That's what our assumption is, just by making through the API calls. But if it is directly running within the plugin, yeah, yeah, we need to see how it fits. If not, it's a showstopper, like Raj said. Yeah.
So, like, is this something you want to test within a POC? What what are your thoughts on
We would want you guys to show us that first, how it looks like to run a backup or restore. Let's see that.
Sure. Yeah, well, like you said, we're going to have a recording in the next few days or so, and let me go back to the team and see where we're at. Yeah. And of course, I'll get you the roadmap so you can see, just where we're heading.
Okay.
Anything else on the roadmap? Anything else?
Yeah, let's see the roadmap. So at any point, is this going to come into the UI, or is it going to be command line for all the time?
No. As I said, the future development is, of course, that you will be using the Bacula user interface to set up backups of OpenStack VMs, to do restores, to schedule them, all of that. But it is not what we have right now. It is going to take time, and it is, in all cases, going to need full access to the OpenStack environment.
Okay, interesting. All right, let's see the roadmap then, if you have it available.
So what we'll do is we'll send that over. Right now it's just in kind of a file, but it talks about things like agentless backup, things like that. Let me throw that over to you, and I'll send. It'll detail. I just want to clean it up. It was just an internal document. I'll send it over to you.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah. Before, but hadn't met Gustavo yet.
Well, I can do. Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you all. I can jump in. I guess Bill.
Whichever. Bill, were you going first, or was?
Yeah, I was just going to give a kind of a BWeb overview.
Okay, perfect.
And Gustavo, I was going to discuss virtual machines in general, the virtual machine overview page, and a little bit of how that works. I wouldn't do an install. I'll let you do the demo for that. But I can just kind of give the basic overview and introduce the virtual machine object concept and those kind of things. And then we can throw it in your direction. Okay. And let me try to share a screen here. Hold on a second. Okay. Here it is. I think it is. There we go. Okay. Well, hello, everybody. It's been a few weeks since we've last spoken. So I know Arno's given a demonstration using BWeb to, to configure some storage. But what I'd like to do here is kind of just a general overview of BWeb. I don't know how deep Arno got into the general parts of BWeb, but we can go through some of that. And like I said, I'd like to show a little bit about the way Bacula keeps track of, let's say, VMs or databases as objects, and kind of show the ease of restoration for some of our hypervisor plugins, for example. And then after this, Gustavo has a demonstration video to show Hyper-V specifically. So anyway, here we are. This is, I like to call it the landing page, but as you can see, it's officially called the main dashboard. Once you log into BWeb, this is where you'll end up. kind of a general overview of the system. We see that this system here, first of all, this is a small system in our lab in Switzerland. So this is a system I kind of maintain and use for demos, and sometimes it's partially broken, only because I'm also trying to recreate customer problems sometimes. But I think it's in pretty good shape today, so we'll just continue along. But anyway, we see some basic information about the system. This director knows about 10 clients in the system, and we'll take a look at that in a second. It shows us the catalog size and how much data is actually stored in the system. Some of this is dedupe, some of it's not, some of it's cloud-based, and so on. And then the total number of jobs that the system knows about, and this is a kind of a small number. A lot of jobs are running on this daily just to keep things flowing, let's say. These jobs get pruned from the database, so this job, this number here is much smaller than the number of jobs that this system has actually run in its history of being let's say, alive. So anyways, we see here there's no jobs running currently. If there were, we'd have a little list of them in this box here. And at the bottom, we see a list of jobs that have run in the past. The important things here are things like, for example, status. Each one of these check boxes or check circles shows that the job terminated normally. We'll see this one here. Arno mentioned earlier the concept of an admin type job in Bacula. Admin type jobs are used typically to do maintenance or to run some scripts on a client or on the director itself. This guy shows a little gear indicating it's an admin job versus a backup or restore job that doesn't look like a gear. So the admin jobs don't really typically move any data. They just kind of are to run scripts and do maintenance tasks. In BWeb, anytime you see a table like this showing different columns, you'll have this little 3-dot menu, and we can pick and choose the columns we want to see. This one, I chose just a few columns that kind of make sense, that are useful in a typical, let's say, come in the morning and see what happened in your system. We have the concept of tags, where basically you could create arbitrary tags, and you can create tags on jobs, as we see here. I just created one a little bit earlier, just simply called S3 Cloud Test. And you can create tags on media. So if you've got tape volumes, you can create tags for those. You can create tags for clients, and then a couple other things. I think even on jobs here, for example, too. But if we jump over to, let's say, for example, our client overview page, and Arno or Gustavo, if there's something on a page that I don't mention and you think I should, just please point it out, and I can kind of go in that direction too. Kind of just doing this on the fly here. So this is the 10 clients that this director knows about. This one here is the client that's running on the director system itself. So if I come over here, click on that and say status, for example, what we see here is sort of a web-based graphical representation of the client. So we know that it's a Linux client, for example. We've got the little Linux penguin here. We know what version of Bacula is running on this. We know what type of system it is. This looks like a Red Hat 8 system here. Little bit of information about any running jobs or number of jobs that have been run in the past, and so on. And then down here we see the plugins. Each of these represented by the icon of the or the logo, let's say, of that specific plugin. And again, this is a demo system, so I have quite a few plugins on here. We can see that I've got the vSphere plugin for vSphere backups. We've got the Postgres and MySQL plugins for database backups as well. Okay, let's see. I can go back to the main dashboard. The key thing I wanted to show you guys here really is the idea of restoring, for example, and then showing you the idea of what we call this new semi-new feature called objects, storing VMs as objects, let's just say. So if I were to do a restore, let's say of a VMware backup job I had, the typical way you might do it is you just click on restore, then you would choose the client that did the backup. In this case, it's the client that's running here. Then we get a list of jobs that were backed up. So I know, for example, I can search for a VMware backup job, right? And so I might choose this job. I can see that it's a full level backup here with an F. Oops, I didn't mean to go forward, but that's okay, we still can. And then what we see is a representation of what Bacula stored when it backed up this virtual machine. If we come down from the top level here, we'll see that we have an @vSphere. Anything that was a plugin will show the name of the plugin, in this case vSphere, with an @ in front of it. So I know that this was a plugin job, and I know that it was a vSphere plugin job. And if I drill down into this directory here, let's say right now this VMware backup job backed up 1 VM, okay? And I can see by this let's call it a semaphore file. I can see by this that it was called GS. This happens to be one of Gustavo's virtual machines in our lab. And it happens to have this name, Oracle DB, et cetera, et cetera. Now, this tells me that this VM here, okay, is stored in this directory. Now, if I had 10 virtual machines backed up in this job, I would find the VM I wanted to restore based on its name here, and I would see the VM directory it's in, and then I can do one of two things. I can go ahead and click into this directory and then pick individual files. Let's say I wanted to investigate the OVF, the config file, okay? I could restore that OVF file to some disk on some Bacula client somewhere, inspect it, give it to Bacula support. Maybe we needed to look at it for something to help you out. Same thing with the disk. I could restore the actual virtual machine disk somewhere and then use the typical Linux tools to go investigate the disk manually if I wanted to. However, what we would typically do is we know what VM we want to restore. We would go like this, and then we would say accept it, and then we would see on the final restore step that we would have a tab here saying vSphere, because Bacula knows this was a vSphere plugin job. And here we would select certain things like restore it to a specific host, ESXi host, give it a new name. For example, I can say, give this VM, restored, blah, 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 VM name. And then we can restore it, and it would be restored as a VM back into the VMware environment. So that's sort of the typical up until several versions ago, the typical, let's say, workflow if you were going to restore, let's say, a virtual machine, for example. But we now have this concept I mentioned of objects. So now virtual machines are treated as objects in the database, in the catalog. So let's say that example I gave where maybe we had 10 VMs backed up in one job, which isn't our best practices recommendation, but people do it, and it's okay. You'd have to go through that process I explained of finding the VM name in the backup, finding the correct directory, and dragging that directory to be restored. However, with the concept of this VMware overview and the concept of objects, I can choose, let's say, VMware here, vSphere. Now I only see my vSphere plugin jobs, and I can pick one of these jobs, and I can say restore this VM. I don't care what job it was backed up in. I don't care where it was backed up to. I just simply click on restore. Bacula already knows all these things about this object, and now we end up on this final page where we simply say, oh, let's give it a new name to restore to, and click restore, and off we go. Now we end up with this new machine called this crazy name in our VMware environment. So that's just the concept of restoring a virtual machine. We have the same kind of concepts with databases. So if I come over to my database overview page, it's the same kind of a deal. If we've got a Postgres database and it has 10 different databases in it, and we've got a backup job that backs up all the databases, for example, in Postgres, we can simply find the database we're looking for, like in this case, let's say the Bacula database. Same concept, I can simply click restore, and it skips over all the manual steps and brings us right to the final page. And that's kind of it for restoring when we talk about virtual machines or databases. Bacula makes it very easy to very quickly to get what you're looking for back into your virtual environment. And so we have this kind of functionality currently for, let's see, at least these four virtual machines: Hyper-V, Nutanix. I heard you guys, somebody mentioned Nutanix earlier. We've got a Nutanix hypervisor plugin, which does the same kind of things I've just shown here with the VMware. We've got Proxmox, Zen server, as you can see here. We also have Red Hat virtualization, which is Overt, which is the open source version of that. Zen server is the official Zen server. We also support the open source XCPNG in the same way. And I don't know if I'm forgetting any other hypervisors we have, guys, but if you want to chime in and throw them out there, I don't have them in my environment currently. But yeah, I think unless you have questions or you want to see something else inside of BWeb, or Gustavo or Arno, if there's something I have forgotten to show, let me know and we can kind of jump to that. But I can kind of stop here for now and let Gustavo. Yeah, go ahead.
Bill, I would like to ask you to take advantage of you and go to the clients and take a look at. I know your hand will start to Twitch, but just click on the Windows, the Hyper-V client.
Which one is he?
HV22K222.
This guy.
Yeah, exactly.
And a status? You want to see status?
Yeah, a status, please.
Okay.
Okay, as you can see here, those are the plugins that we have. We have the Hyper-V. We have two technologies. We recommend the latest one in API to use, but we have several VSS, which is the very first one layer that allowed us to back up Hyper-V. It was for the old Hyper-V hosts. And so basically this is the output, the information, and you'll see some information from the backup that I ran yesterday to get the video ready, the backup and the restore. And basically what happens here is, I will show you afterwards, but we have a 3-node cluster, and currently we just need one to have this plugin installed in one of those nodes. For instance, that depends on the approach that you want for the Hyper-V backup you want. And then Backlog will do everything that's necessary to perform the backups. Okay, so that's a comment for me before we jump into anything else. Thank you.
So is this how you guys are planning to integrate OpenStack in a future roadmap as well, something similar where we can see?
Yes, this is the goal we have there as well.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll get you that doc, Raj, afterwards. It really outlines it. I'll send it over.
Yeah.
I'll clean it up.
I was just curious, what would it look like potentially, right? So.
And most likely, sorry, Bill, there will be some thing on the automation dialogue. I don't know if Bill got something already on it, but
what is this, Gustavo? What should I show?
The automation dialogue that you see on the fourth from the.
Yeah, I don't have anything configured in there right now.
Okay.
But I can comment on that. So there's a couple things I want to show before I hand over to you, Gustavo.
Sure. Go ahead.
I know on the list, you guys were also interested in S3 cloud backups, so I can discuss that a little bit if you're interested. The other piece of the puzzle, what Gustavo was mentioning, is we have this automation section. And I'd rather not display it because I'm not that familiar with the web interface part of it. But the idea is we've got this, the developer's been working on this automation script, let's say. And I like to kind of jokingly say it's sort of one script to rule them all, in the sense that the idea is you would run it, let's say, against your VMware environment, and you'd say, okay, go ahead, when you run the script pointing at your, say, VMware environment, or in the case in the future, we're hoping, OpenStack, okay, or Nutanix and so on, you say, look, go ahead and run against this VMware environment. For every VM that you find, create a job, Okay, and so Bacula goes ahead, or the script goes ahead and creates a job and a file set for each VM to back up, and then the next night you would run it again as automated as part of the scheduler, Bacula scheduler, and then what it would do is it would say, oh look, I found a new VM. It would create a new job for that new VM, and so that anybody that's you may not be responsible for the people running your hypervisor environments, right? So they could be commissioning and decommissioning VMs on the fly, and you wouldn't know about it. But with this automation, we create a new job before you kick off your nightly backups, for example, and now we get every new VM that was created. And then for any VM that now is missing tonight that was here yesterday, the script has the ability to either delete the job and file set or simply disable that job. And the nice thing about that is that you come in the morning and you can be confident that any new VMs that were created the previous day are now backed up, and then any VMs that aren't there anymore aren't attempted to be backed up, and you don't come in the morning with 100 failed jobs because somebody decommissioned a bunch of VMs. So we've got some automation for that.
Plugin that you're going to use, the client that you're going to back up, and